Hey everybody, we're doing this again because my microphone was being picked up way over on the other side of the room. So we're gonna do this conversation all over again because why not? Let's see if Rob actually knew what he's talking about. Character design. So a friend of mine, asked me today, "Do you know any good character design books? Do you know any good character design books, Rob? What books can I get that would help me get better at becoming a character designer?" And the easy answer is pretty much all of them, right? The more complicated answer is none of them. None of them are going to take you to the next level, right? And the reason why is character design specifically is about three core things that I've sort of put together on my own throughout the years: construction, gesturals, visual storytelling. Construction being three-dimensionality of characters and shape design. So if you look at Lilo and Stitch, they have a shape design. If you look at Emperor's New Groove, they have a shape design. If you look at South Park, there's a shape design. If you had to draw those characters from any angle, Invader Zim, shape design, any angle, like a statue, like a little toy moving around a room, construction's going to get you there. It's the most important thing you could dig up. Now, the second part would be gesturals, and that's how the characters actually sit. How do they slouch? How do they emote? Right? How do you put energy into a character? How do you get them to think? When you look at him, you go, "That's an evil bastard," right? Or "That's a cute, fun person." Gesturals would get you there. Gesturals come from probably what you understand as life drawing. You've heard where, like in those colleges, someone comes in and they pose like with a broom, right? That's kind of for construction. But if they're just sitting there thinking or they're studying, those are designed for you to do gesturals where you 10 minutes you sketch out what they're doing. In 5 minutes, you sketch out what they're doing. In 1 minute, you sketch out the exact same thing. In 30 seconds, in 10 seconds. And the goal of this is to capture the action, right? To capture the umami of the pose. There's a Disney artist named by Vilppu, 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 who taught this in a book. He would teach Disney animators this stuff. And Hayao Miyazaki, famous animator, would say, "Got to go actually like study people, actually observe them." So before the pandy hit, you go to a mall, go to the park, anywhere, and you could observe people and sketch what they're doing as quickly as possible. These days, if you wanted to do warm-ups with that sort of thing, Shutterstock's a good free option for you because you can type in anything into Shutterstock, like school, kindergarten, firefighters, post office, delivery, Zoom, CrossFit, cooking, whatever you want. And then you can time yourself 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute. So that gives you that life force for a character that it's very difficult for a book to put this stuff together because it's just such a vast conversation. The third one would be visual storytelling. So how I've always described it is I taught myself visual storytelling on accident because I would go to Disneyland when I was a kid. And I would notice that when you're on rides like the Pirates of the Caribbean, these aren't rides based around like roller coasters, like thrill rides. They're storytelling rides. So you'd have like this pirate in a bed, right? And it'd be like a skeleton. A skeleton would be in a bed. And it would be telling a story. Did that pirate, like want to, like, was it into, did the pirate die and they put him in the bed to rest with all of his treasures? Was the pirate so greedy that he kept all the treasures to himself and lived there until he died? Like, there's a story there, but it's not the skeleton. It's not the pirate clothes. It's not the items. It's all those things together. Create a visual story. And this happens in character design. Like when you get a theme, a very specific theme, like say you got an action figure and it's like Samurai Batman, to make a bad example, but what does that mean? You know, and you could say, well, it's Batman in samurai armor. Possibly, it could be a lot of different things. You know, it could be a historical era. It could be an over the top space thing. So the visual storytelling is the specific items and accessories and materials that go into a character design, right? Like you see here, this is my chill, non-confrontational, laid back, you know, no effort Rob. Minimal effort Rob, because Rob's got a long day of drawing ahead of him. And the reason why I'm having a conversation about it more than come down, let me sketch you a bunch of stuff, is I have found, I went to college, art college, for longer than I should have. And it was like a 3-year course. I dragged out almost 5. And the thing I learned, more importantly, beyond the technique of doing something, was understanding what it was I was trying to do before I started doing things. So if you're wanting to become a better character designer, you need to be very specific about designing what, right? If you're designing a toy, right, or a little figure or fan art or something, that's one thing, right? Like if I'm drawing a little Harley Quinn here, right, that is a whole different thing than if I was going to set up a bunch of character designs for a comic book. This right here would not make for a very good comic book design. Well, this is better, right? But this could be overly complex. If every panel, all my characters had to have a giant mallet and a giant weapon and all this other stuff. So character design is also like color. It's relative to what it's next to. Like this is a very complementary color scheme, right? But if I take this background, check this out, right? If I take this background and I put in this, well, now I don't fit this at all. This is totally clashing. Why? Because these things have to fit the environment that they're in. Otherwise, they just feel out of place. So that's visual development, folks. There's some really good books. Again, I've talked before about Masters of Anatomy has some really good books that you can get digital copies of. And they're really nice for inspirational reference. But if you don't specifically have a very specific goal you need to achieve, that when it's time to create something brand new that doesn't exist in a book, you're going to be lost. This is why a lot of art videos and design and stuff, educational teaching, is based around results oriented design or philosophy or whatever. I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, they have these art classes. I took one every year. And it always went like this. They tell you about construction and perspective. You do a cube, right? You do a cylinder, a cone. And then they'll give you immediately a basket of fruit and tell you to redraw it. Or they'll take your face and they'll grid it up into squares and you'll draw and shade each little square until you have a whole face. And the reason why is they need you to take that drawing home to show your parents every week how you learn something. Because you can say, I got better. I drew a shaded face. I went with the construction, and then we did the fruit, and then now I got the shaded face. And it makes it look as though you have learned something. All you learned how to do was draw from little squares in a shaded face. You didn't actually learn anything. It's an illusion. It's really good to show people who don't know what they're looking at that you learned something. But when it actually comes time to say, hey, now I want to turn this knowledge I have into designing a genie. Let's say a genie for a Disney film, in which there's going to be a genie. What does that mean? You know, that could be a lot of different things. So that's shape design. First, you got to know the story. You got to know the premise, right? You got to have all the different character types, the theme, the shape design, construction, the gesturals, the visual storytelling. And you have to do a little bit of each for a very long time and put them together. So if you're older or impatient and you don't want to do each one for a very long time, what I would recommend you do is continue doing whatever you're doing. Like if you're drawing fan art and that's all you want to do, or if you're drawing your own comics, that's what you want to do, fine, do that. But 2 hours a week for 12 weeks, focus on one thing, just construction for 2 hours, one day for 12 weeks. Or theme, like a Robin Hood theme, right? Or any theme. You pick a theme you want, right? Make it universal, make it dumb, make it boring, make it not interesting. Because your job as an artist, especially a character designer, is to take things that aren't interesting and make it interesting. So I face some trouble trying to draw flat color. Well, flat color is not drawing. Color is a whole separate conversation, sir. Color is complex, so it's way different. We're talking about character design. So this is the fundamental deal. This is the thing that it's just not going to get you. It's not going to get me a Skillshare set of videos. It's not going to get me domestic. It's not going to get you likes on Instagram or Facebook or whatever stupid platform comes next. It's that thing that I sat there doing that I chose in college to be, I'm going to focus on construction and gesturals because I knew this is the thing to make me a better artist. And I would say I put a good 2 solid years of doing that and no anything else beyond what I had to do for class. But there wasn't this portfolio of amazing designs. It was construction and gesturals. Now it's a little easier. I think construction is a little easier to learn in that you have a lot of 3D modeling options that you can like trace over, right? Which helps, but it won't help if you have to design something that doesn't exist, like, or it would be difficult to model, right? So like, let's say they wanted, to look at the designs in Mitchell versus the Machines, right? Like that's a lot of shape design oriented. They weren't starting with the 3D model and tracing over it. So you'll want to learn construction, but then you want to build your own shapes. I use silhouettes. I call them blobbies, where I blob in shapes, little blobs that I can carve out, and then I construct like I would a 3-dimensional model. I'd construct from center and build around and create a shape. If I need that to move around, then I would want to use my gestural techniques to make that shape move, to inject energy into one drawing. All the other elements on that bit, the color, the materials, the props, the visual storytelling needs to come from reference that I would plug into that, right? Usually 3 to 4 or 5 little reference pieces at the most. You don't want a ton of this stuff. Sometimes your art director will hand it to you. Sometimes you got to conjure it up yourself. And then you need to then apply, again, your constructions, your gesturals, and your visual to each little element. Like, this is where it's the same thing over and over again. Like, if you look at the mallet, this could have just been a round mallet, right? But I like mallet tuft. See the mallet tuft right here? That's mallet tuft. I like this tuft. And in my mind, I see this being like nice, like icing on a cupcake. Right, that goes, or a donut that goes over, and it's got these thick little tufts, and I put the bullseye in. That's a visual storytelling thing because you want to hit the thing, right, like a target arrow. So the bullseye implies that this is designed for hitting things dead in the center, So those are all little elements that build around the construction. The gestural is her like in this like running pose. It's not super running. It's not dynamic anime cool fucking like super dynamic foot in your face sliding DreamWorks animation, It's not that. It's like Q-figs. Right? It's like a little statue run. It's designed that you kind of put it on your shelf and you turn it that way and you go, that's cool. So it's a different kind of gestural, but it's still there. And then all the visual development goes around that. So that is very difficult to put into one book. It could be 3,000 pages You could read it, ignore it, look at the images, get what you want. The thing with books, The Masters of Anatomy is nice because a lot of it doesn't have any words. It's just the images. They'll give you the theme and then show you what the artist did. So that's inspirational. But you yourself need to be one part editor and one part production artist, where you need to say, all right, the thing that I specifically want to do here is I want to do like a little statue looking version of Harley Quinn, but my own, right? What are the, and then write down all the little things that might go into that. And then work out the construction. We got to go get reference, right? So you got your theme, right? Your reference. You can do some visual development first. Doesn't matter what order. But then I got construction, gesturals. You combine them together, you get your character design. So save yourself thousands of dollars. Get yourself 1 or 2 books a year, tops. I mean, there was a time 10 years ago where I took all my books and I gave them away to an art department. I purged all my books. And then, I've bought some more over the years, but I have a very minimal amount these days. Taking some Udemy classes. Here we go. Let's read this. Ryan says he's taken some Udemy classes on character design. I think the struggle the most with posing and dynamics and interesting shapes. So, posing and dynamics is gesturals. Shapes and silhouettes is construction. In that construction, I learned the most technical thing you can do, which is Scott Robertson put out these Gnome on DVDs back in 2004. I had already focused on construction and perspective on my own, but I didn't have a really good way. It wasn't ever explained in a way that was beyond my own intuitive sense, like 1.2 point perspective. What Scott Robertson would do was explain how to draw things from center, and you can rebuild and grid things out and then mirror those options. Now, that's very technical work. It's not, how do I say this? It's very technical. It's not, it's really great for industrial design, spaceships and stuff. But if you need all that stuff to have emotion and character, the gesturals is where that energy comes from. I used to say, I want to animate in one drawing because I don't like putting 5,000 drawings down on a page to make something move around. I don't enjoy that. Some people do. They love the character runs and it zigs and it skids and it comes over here. I can see all that in my head. I can see the character flip, land, and then run the foot over, and then we're falling back that way. And then it scoots over, and then there's an immediate. But I just want to get that in 1 or 2 drawings. I don't want to do all that work. So that's a whole thing there where you pick your gesturals, then you grab your 1 or 2 poses, and then you reconstruct them. You put the energy back in. I've always appreciated how you can tell a story of body language. Yeah. So that's the most important thing, because let's be honest, a lot of the stuff we get hired to do is not really exciting. So let's think about this. If you ever watched the anime Cowboy Bebop, there's some amazing chase sequences and little fights and whatever. That's what's happening on the center of the screen. Everything behind these, all these characters living their lives. So 90% of what you see is actually all this other stuff. It's the thing in the center is the 10%. You're focused on that 10%. But all that uninteresting shit is actually there's a lot more of that. And there's a lot more variety of it being put into a scene than there is the action. That other stuff, you're only going to learn by drawing. That's what life drawing is. Life drawing isn't so much, I'm going to sit there and the character's got a rod and they're posing and they got another thing and they're this. Yeah, that's life drawing. But really, that's not, people don't do this. Like, people do like this, right? Right? Like this is why it helps. And you're going to see more, I've noticed over the last year or two specifically, more animators are putting down like their videos. If you see like on the Spider-Verse, or like, here's how I recorded my own video of them actually acting out a scene and then using that as reference. Because you need to, if the more you have characters doing human stuff, you need to actually take it from people doing human stuff. And a book can't put every human pose that's relaxed or reading a book. It's just impossible. So books are really good, really, really good for being inspirational, really, really bad at like helping you with a specific project. I remember an Ethan Becker let's see this. I remember Ethan Becker said the most important thing is if the pose looks cool, right, is if the pose looks cool more than knowing every muscle in the human body. Sure. Well, a muscle is irrelevant when your character is essentially a sack of potatoes. So, like not everything's about muscles, right? Unless it's Street Fighter, then it better have muscles. Also, okay, you can call me Tifa to make my name easier. Okay. All right, Tifa. So, yeah. Don't worry about the books. If something interests you and you got the money, great. But I would really recommend, construction. Learning from 3D modeling is kind of easy. I found that that's the easiest thing. Like you can trace over a 3D model, but then you need to actually look and reconstruct. Learning basic construction, Scott Robertson is the one I recommend. Super technical, gonna hurt your head. Also want to remind people, if your head's hurting, then you're learning. When I'm having fun, right, then I'm doing what I already know. But when I get this little pain right back there, that's when I know I'm learning. I got to usually take breaks or a nap after I get done. But you get better. So that's the most important thing. And again, I don't make any money off any of this stuff. So let's see here. Let me go to the Masters of Anatomy and show you this really quick. These guys, they're pretty good, These are pretty dope. Let's see. So you can see like this is their new book coming out. They got a book on hands. They got all these are available in ebooks, but you can see like all this stuff is super, super helpful, But if you got to draw like look at this anatomy stuff, right? Really interesting. Except like what happens when they hire you to draw the Yokai Watch comic book? This ain't gonna help so much. So it's an interesting example in anatomy. It's fun, but again, they're great for inspiration, but they're not so good for very specific help with a specific project. I remember let me see this. I remember the first work years I saw was in a Darksiders book. I was enthralled with how strong your pose was and how clean everything was. I've been hooked. Oh, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, the crazy part is those are just roughies. Those were the sketches for the art I was supposed to make. But I had both my mom and dad died within a year, in a year, and that upset my entire world life for a little while. So super appreciative. I've learned a lot more since then. The biggest thing I can say I've learned in the last 3 or 4 years of working on Spyro and Crash and games and stuff is the theme of what you're trying to communicate with the character. So there's a pro tip, right? Pro tip. If it helps you. It's being able to, so like when you want to buy a skin for a game and it's not a licensed character, something you don't know, you kind of want to look at it and go, oh, what is that? What is the theme? And so I've actually gotten beyond Christmas or Halloween. That can be something. I've also gotten that into a phrase, right? So mischievous punk or sad, sad jester. It's trying to come up with a little bit of an emotional phrase to inject into the storytelling of whatever it is you're working on. I found that is what helps people feel like there's something more to just a drawing. There's something behind the art. The theme gets a person, oh, that's that reminds, that's the thing. I like that stuff. I like that thing. And I kind of learned that doing t-shirts, because when you walk into a store and you go to buy a shirt, yeah, sometimes you're looking for like a Marvel or Star Wars or something, but a lot of times you go, oh, that's dope. Why is that cool? I don't know. There's an iconography to that, right? But it would really come down to theme. So surface level, holidays, right? But you got to be very careful you don't end up in like a Hallmark card thing. More advanced level is 2 or 3 words. Christmas, Christmas, mad scientist, Christmas mad scientist. Third one, birds, So that is the more complex conversation to have with your theme, right? But it's very specific. Now you know specifically what you're drawing. Christmas mad scientist birds. So there you go. On the topic, one more to go. Yep, Jenna, so that's marriage children. On the topic of anatomy, I love when an artist has made anatomy their own. I think Mike Mignola's anatomy is one of my favorites, especially how he drops the head and the shoulders and their long, lanky arms. Yeah, and I would say his anatomy has changed. I am a bigger fan of Mignola's earlier work, specifically Cosmic Odyssey, the Dracula adaptation, the X-Force work he did over Rob Liefeld's breakdowns. I first few volumes of Hellboy. Now I feel, for me, his modern stuff is more like an outline. It's like a quicker version. So it's not quite my cup of tea, but Mignola is one of the first artists I ever saw who would draw through everything and then only ink what was being lit by a certain angle, or was making that. Sometimes it wasn't even a realistic light. It was like a top-down light, but it was meant to give what was being inked was meant to give the drawing weight, right? And that always, to me, was something that his art did, was it felt weighted on the page. It wasn't using a bunch of feathering and inking techniques or tricks to make the drawing more than it was. He was giving the forms weight. And the more simpler you get, the less place you have to hide on a page. So that's something to remember. Simplicity does not mean easier. Simplicity means I'm carving away, and whatever I leave left on that plate, needs to be the best. It needs to be the most concentrated, potent form of whatever it was I was working on. So yeah, Mignola's great. Mignola, Jeff Smith is a master of gestures, right? Bone. Claire Wendeling is a master at visual development. She can draw anything, anatomy, drapery, simple cartoons. The best range. Claire Wendeling has the best range, I think, of any modern animation comic book illustrator. So super, super awesome. All right, everybody, that's it. That's 30 minutes. That's a conversation. I got to go do a Star Wars podcast at Making Star Wars Done. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. We'll have another conversation. So please, please, please take 1 or 2 things away from this. Spend time working on improving the things you want to improve on, and less time worrying about whether it gets engagement on an algorithm, because those algorithms change. The apps, the platforms will change. It really won't matter. So get better, share your work. We'll talk about it later. Peace, everybody. I'm out.